is Miriam Bogler, and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Pause. In this presentation, I am going to tell you about project-based learning. When people are talking about projects, they are talking about three types of projects. First one is the traditional project, the one that I used to do when I was in school. So for example, if there was a science fair, I decided to work on a project about planets, and then I would go and do research about the planets, about each planet, and summarize it and add a few images, and maybe even create a few of the planets using some arts and crafts materials, and then took it to the science fair, presented it, and that was the traditional project. And then the other type of projects that is considered today as projects, or what we talk about project-based learning, is when students build something. They just build it. And they don't really have any, they are not building it in context, meaning that they don't really understand the information that is absolutely necessary for them to understand in order to build whatever they are building and also understand what is going on. So for example, if they build a robot, they just follow some blueprints, they finish the building, and by the end of the process, they really did not understand much for sure. They don't know how to build their own robot out of this experience. And the reason is that in addition to understanding how to build, they also need to understand a whole slew of underlying concepts and knowledge base that is absolutely necessary for them. So for example, if they decide to take the robot through a maze, just understanding how to build a robot is not enough, because there's so many other things that will impact the process of taking this robot successfully through the maze. Like for example, even the lighting in the room, something that's called ambient light, or how well charged is the battery in their robotic tests, are all things that are influencing whether the robot is going to go through the maze as the students intended, or it will stray and will never get to the end. So these are just simple examples of those things, but definitely, very important for them to understand. And so that's the second type, as I said before. And the third type, of course, is the real project-based learning, the way it was described and defined by experts. So one of those is the George Lucas Foundation, from which I actually took this definition that you see here. And so the definition says project-based learning is an inquiry-based educational approach in which students explore real-world problems through individual and group projects. Now, as I said before, I already hinted that a real project-based learning is one that that doesn't just create something, and whether it is something that you create with your hands, like build something, or create by with text, but you are not just building or creating it, but you're also consulting all the necessary information that you absolutely have to understand in order to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. Now, here the addition here is that this teaching and learning method encourages students to make sense of why content is useful and how it might be applied. Now, this, of course, this part of the definition hints to the fact that one of the biggest criticisms for traditional learning is that that things that are taught are not in context. For example, if a math teacher is teaching the Pythagorean theorem, and students learn how to develop it and everything, but by the end of the process, they really start wondering, why do they have to learn this? And I heard that a lot from many students about different subjects. Why do I need to struggle with this when I don't see the sense? I don't see why I need to do this. And those are all valid questions. And of course, what they are telling you here is that project-based learning is exactly the opposite of that. So in a project-based learning situation, students are not going to wonder whether they need to learn something or not, because all those things that they are going to learn are going to be absolutely necessary for them to understand or to solve the problem in the end. So let's just focus on all those characteristics as they are described here. So PBL can be deeply engaging and effective as compared with traditional teacher-centered instructional approaches. And so again, this is a comparison to the traditional learning, which they already tell you that traditional teacher-centered, because the teacher is in the front and the students are listening and watching the teacher as the teacher talks. Of course, the problem here is that in teacher-centered instructions, the teacher is usually it is usually a process that is quite boring, because after a few minutes of listening to the teacher, students' attention wears off and they stop listening and learning is not so effective. But on the other hand, they tell you that PBL is actually very deeply engaging because it is actually student-centered. They are the bosses. They are the ones who are directing the entire process. They are asking the questions. They are trying to solve the problem and so on. And the responsibility falls on their shoulders. PBL involves complex tasks organized around a challenging central question, resulting in reflection, iteration, and the creation of a final public product. So here, again, it actually breaks down all the components of what does it mean to work in a real project-based learning environment. So one of them is you start with a central question, and that can be, it's also called a driving question or main question. And next step can be starting to ask many refining questions. And those refining questions are actually helping students to decide what are the knowledge areas that they absolutely have to understand in order to solve the problem in the end. And those knowledge areas are part of that complex series of tasks that they are talking about that are organized around the challenging central questions. So again, that central questions help them determine that and delve deep into that using research. And of course, this whole process results in reflection, iteration, and the creation of a final public product. So in addition to, so the final public product is the goal, but before reaching that phase, this is a constant process of creating, checking, reflecting, asking for feedback, going back to the drawing board, fixing, again reflecting, again asking for feedback. So this whole process goes on until the real final product or the final product is achieved, and then they can present it to the public. Projects are anchored in core subject matter content, allowing students to build knowledge and develop problem-solving, critical thinking, and collaboration skills. Of course, again, as I showed you here about the main components, one of them was those knowledge areas that students are identifying that are absolutely necessary for them to understand. So that is the one that actually is the subject matter content that they absolutely have to understand. And by learning, by researching it, of course, they build knowledge and develop problem solving and critical thinking skills, as well as by working together with their team members, they collaborate. So each of them provides one part of that research, but putting it all together, it helps to build or to get to the final goal. PBL is a tool that can create a more student-centered learning environment that improves outcomes. And as I showed here before, the teacher-centered versus the student-centered, of course, PBL is student-centered. So the responsibility of the project and everything in it falls on the students. And on each team member, each of them has the responsibility to assume one or more tasks to complete them to the satisfaction of all team members, because all these tasks are going in the end to lead to a wonderful final product. And also, of course, in terms of responsibility, it is very important that each of them fulfills their role, because if they are not, then of course the responsibility will fall on the other team members, and that is absolutely unfair to them. And so here it says research confirms that PBL has a positive impact on students, leading to increased achievement and higher levels of motivations. And numerous studies found positive association between PBL and students' development of knowledge and cognitive skills. So let me just show you. Just in last February, the George Lucas Foundation, together with 5 major universities, came out with research that shows the same conclusion, that the evidence is clear. Rigorous project-based learning is an effective lever for student success, or project-based learning boosts student achievement in AP courses and so on. So all these are leading to the same thing. And this is just one, the latest research in a series of researchers that are pointing to the same direction, that project-based learning increases learning outcomes in students. So let me just show you as an example of this type of project here. Let me go and show you this process that I was talking about, of the driving question, the complex tasks that are built around it, the whole process of reflection and iteration. So this is such a project. It's called Engineering Design Template. And the idea here is that these students in this team are going to have an idea for an innovation. But before, or want to build an innovation, want to help society in some way, I should say, maybe that's a better description of it. This team wants to come up with something that's going to help society in some way. But they are not so sure. They have a few pain points that they want to focus on, but they are not sure if this is what also the public thinks. And so they are going to start by actually sending a survey, and this survey is going to say what does not work as well as you would like to work, and so on. So they are expecting the public to actually respond to this. And once they get a response, to this, then they will look through the responses, and the team will each come up with their own ideas of what they concluded from this and what they think that they should attempt to create. And then they will vote on each of those opinions and come up with the idea that they think that's probably solving the most the biggest pain point. And so they will describe the idea here, and they will tell us what they think, what type of problem it solves, and some very rough execution ideas how to go about solving this, and what they think that the impact will be. This is all rough drafts, nothing in detail, nothing specific. But then moving on to research, here to the research tab, this is where they start the next phase of the project. And here they will start doing research whether such an idea already exists, and if it does, what does it solve, and what does it not solve? Because if it doesn't solve everything, maybe it's a good idea to develop ours, because we are solving more than our competition here. And then just come up with a napkin version of their idea, and just draw it roughly here, and describe the innovation. But at this point, they actually need to send it again back to the public, and they will send another survey. And this survey this time is going to ask them, do you like this new innovation as presented to you, and is this new innovation useful, and so on. So they want to hear the public's opinion before they move on to actually design it. And once they get that result, the chart that shows what is, which idea is the best, or whether it's a good idea, they move on to the design phase. And in the design phase, they are now going to come up with the design files and describe exactly how they are going to create this product and describe it in words, as well as come up with some criteria for success for their innovation design, and again come up with reflect on it. The team will reflect on their design, and moving on from here to the prototyping part. This is where they will start using, coming up with what types of material or equipment they need in order to build it, but then also take picture of the prototyping process and even describe each steps here, step by step, show how they built it, and even give us a picture of the final product, as well as reflection. Again, the team will reflect on it and come up with feedback. And then moving on to the testing phase. This is where we start testing. Well, is this product going to do exactly what I wanted it to do? And then just use these annotation steps to show exactly how they tested the product and what happened. And as well as, again, reflect on it and send a survey to the public, because they want the public to tell them whether this prototype is something good that will solve that problem that they wanted to solve initially. And then moving on to the revisions part. And this is where, once they hear back from the public and they will come up with an innovation improvement list, a description of the revision design, and even come up with the design files here, as well as pictures of each step of the prototyping process, and come up with and reflect on it in the team, as well as send it out again to the public to provide feedback about the new version, and retest again and come up again. So you understand the idea, you understand how this whole entire process is really emulating what is happening in the real world work situation. This is how teams in workplaces work. Nobody designs a car and immediately builds it and it's out the door. It is such a long process of a whole team, each of them responsible on each part of the car and on every aspect of it. And they put together all their knowledge into one thing that's called the car, and then testing it, and then revising it, and testing it again, and so on. So basically what we are trying to do in this project, in this real project-based learning environment, we are trying to get students to get accustomed to this type of work, to the real the way people work in real life. So that's what this is. Now, before I conclude this presentation, I would like to jump to the second tab here, which is design principles. And what I want to talk about here is what are the PBL design principles that somebody who engages in project-based learning should follow. So it starts here and it ends here. So the first step is effective PBL requires purposeful and authentic experiences generated by students engaging in relevant questions. So of course, the projects need to be authentic, need to be something out of life experiences of the students, or or things that are in the news, something that people are troubled, like for example the environment, or even in our case now the pandemic, all kinds of things that are in the center stage of daily life, and of course in case of students it also has to be in the center stage of their life. A main question should drive a unit of study. So this is the driving question that I was talking about, and that question should be feasible to consider, worthwhile, contextualized, meaningful, and ethical. And so in this case, feasible. So for example, let's look at these sample questions that are actually good questions for project-based learning. So for example, how to design a new park that supports local plant life. And of course, this is feasible because it can be done. All you have to do is just really study what are the local plants, and then see how you can create a park out of those plants. And so definitely feasible. and worthwhile, definitely worthwhile, because the park is really a place where the public enjoys being, and having the right type of plants there is going to make it something that, you know, it's easy to treat, because it's not, you know, these are not plants that will not be sustainable, or, you know, and contextualize in the sense that it's not enough just to go there and buy the plants and not understand anything about plants, or how to plant, or when to plant, or all these other things that I said before, the underlying concepts, or the knowledge base that is necessary, absolutely necessary to understand in order to make a real nice park out of, you know, in this project. And then meaningful, definitely meaningful, as I said before, park is a place that the public enjoys being in, so it's definitely meaningful for everybody to, you know, to create a project like this. And ethical, definitely ethical. I mean, nobody's hurting anything here, nobody's destroying. On the contrary, we are building something that the public enjoys. And so, as I said before, these are, you know, some projects that you can use. So the first one I already read, how to build affordable housing. Yes, that's a problem today, and, you know, there could be all kinds of ideas about how we can increase housing and solve some problems in society today, or solve a public health problem. In this case, of course, the pandemic that we are facing right now. Um, then projects should feature deep integration with course content and be rooted in core subject areas, helping to deepen and build student knowledge of important topics. So this is basically just hinting to the fact that creating a project such as building something without having the contextual knowledge that's necessary for understanding it will not be enough. You actually have to provide, you know, when you are assigning a project, have to provide the path for students to understand that it's not enough just to build. It's very important to also understand the base, or the, you know, the knowledge base that is necessary to solve that problem. And then quality PBL benefits from collaborative peer-to-peer interaction and trusting student-teacher relationships. So, of course, nothing in the world, you know, is built by one person. I mean, usually it's not built by one person. Most things are built by teams, especially today. And the more complex our world becomes, the more this is true. And therefore, students need to get used to this type of environment where each of them contributes something to the project, but they are not, but neither of them is doing everything in the project. And so clearly that is very important. And of course, they need to trust the teacher as, you know, as the mentor who has the knowledge to guide them through the entire project. And then learning from research and relying on evidence about what works is essential. These practices include providing feedback to students, creating opportunities for reflection, and empowering students to share their learning with others. So, of course, providing feedback to students is absolutely important. That's actually the role of the teacher here. As I said before, the teacher is a mentor. The teacher is not supposed to guide it, to guide the project in a way that dictates every step of the project. That responsibility falls on the student. But if the teacher sees that the students, as they work, they veer off the right direction, the teacher should be guiding them back to the right path. That's the role. This is where they provide feedback to students. Creating opportunities for reflection would be, as I showed before, the project that I showed before, where after every step they were reflecting on what they did and criticizing their own work before they sent it out to the public to also get their opinion, and then be able to revise and change and reproduce again. And empowering students to share their learning. So this is the last phase. Once the students finished everything, they revised and so on, and came up with a final product. This is when they are ready to show it to the entire class and show it to the school or any other place, to show their project and show the entire process. they used in order to solve the problem. So thank you very much. I hope that this gave you a good foundation about what is project-based learning and how do you work in project-based learning environments. And as I said, this is the first course in a series. The next courses are going to be about how to use Project Pulse to do project-based learning and how to do project management. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this course.